Can you hear me now? Please let me know if you can hear me, because I got some levels going on there. Sound! Wonderful. Man, it's my usual problem when I'm not checking everything before going live. Some things ought to be broke. What was it this time? Apparently I had to plug and unplug and replug my microphone, and now it works. I didn't change anything from my last week's setup, so yeah. There we go. Thank you so much for dropping by. It's the usual thing with me, technical difficulties, and I think this one is behind us now. So let me try again my introduction. Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns. I welcome you to another episode of Film Motion Video, where I'm doing just some nerdy stuff with a computer. Pretty much whatever I do during the week, I just make a distilled version of it on this weekend stream. As always, our wonderful drinking game. When I see unicorn, let's all have a sip of water, because it's healthy to stay hydrated. And please remind me when I say unicorn without having a sip of water. There we go. Wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to drop by on this wonderful Sunday and just watch some nerdery. Okay, Sorceress is also here. Hey party people, that must be us apparently, because nothing says more party than doing nerdy stuff with a computer. Okay, as you probably know from the description, today I'm going to be concerned with getting stuff from Google Maps or Google Earth, essentially 3D models, the 3D information there, to your 3D application of choice. The thing is, disclaimer number one, no, you can't use Google Maps 3D models in your projects as is, but they are usually a very good reference if you want to get proportions right, or just have some kind of placeholders in there, for example, for a cityscape, or if you want to model the pyramids of Egypt and you want to get them right and in the right distance, it's really a cool tool to get the actual 3D topographical and topological data of Google and into your 3D application, just as a starting point. The other disclaimer is, no, I didn't come up with that myself. I was following to 80-90% a certain YouTube video, which I will also show you just the link. Maybe I will post even the link in the chat that we all have it. This is where I got it from, because I recently needed it for a pet project. And once I'm through with the process, I will, if you're interested, I will show you my little pet project for which I'm going to use this. Cool. We are 8 viewers. Thank you so much for dropping by. This is more than usual. Let's dive right in with what will you need and how to do it. Again, it's not very trivial, and there's a lot of fun stuff involved, but I think this is the cool part of trying to squeeze out something that's actually not meant to be. Where you're actually not supposed to get the 3D models of Google Maps. Okay, let's switch over to my screen. Still got the sound controls open. Wonderful. But we're not going to need them now. Okay, so you will need a couple of tools to get started, but first I will show you the original source video where I got this from. Let me just copy and paste it in the chat. This on YouTube is called Importing Actual 3D Models from Google Maps, and it was by Élie, Michel, I think this is how you pronounce it. And you can find most of the stuff here, but it's not that current. I had some troubles following this guide, and this is why I thought I show you a new version of this, because like I said, I had some troubles until I managed to get it to work. Okay, so what tools will you need? Let me just see here in my notes. Tool number one, you may already be using it or not. This is called RenderDoc. Actually, it's a very neat tool when you're debugging draw calls and such. And where do you get it? Let me just show you here the website. It doesn't cost you anything, and the latest release is 1.8, but you don't want the latest release. The one that I managed to get it to work was release 1.6. So let's make sure to get 1.6. You can find it here under renderdoc.org/builds, and there is renderdoc 1.6. And you can even get it as a portable version, which I prefer, so that my registry doesn't get cluttered. Okay, so we got one thing that is renderdoc 1.6. I'm using here the 64-bit version, but I think this .64 is not pertaining to the 64-bit version. Yeah, this is the one that I'll be working with. The next thing that we need is an older Chrome version. Let me just check which Chrome I have right now, because as soon as you go to help and about Google Chrome, it will start updating. So the version that I'm running here is 83.0. Not quite sure whether this will work or not. Apparently it's able to do the stuff that we need, but if it doesn't work, I will download an older Chrome version. And this is a little bit problematic because you have to completely uninstall Chrome, then get a web installer with the other version that you want to install it over, and then you can use it. So probably none of your bookmarks or so get lost, but either way, it's a little bit, cumbersome. The version that I've tested it with was Chrome 71.0, and you might be wondering where to get older Chrome versions from. And let me just paste it also here in the chat. This is where I got my older Chrome versions from, because it's, like I said, it's not really that simple getting older Chrome versions. And yeah, I think the latest one that worked that I tested with was Chrome 71.0. So it was that one from 2018 apparently. So yeah, those are our tools: Chrome, renderdoc, and of course we want a Blender. Because we will be using, essentially our process is as follows. We take the 3D information that Google Maps displays actually from the graphics card, from the GPU and all the video memory that is there, make a dump of it, and then import this dump into Blender. And if you're a Blender person, then go right ahead, make it with Blender, and of course we can also export from Blender into to our 3D application of choice. Yes, so I've already downloaded here Blender. The latest version currently at the time of this stream is 2.82a. And this is just a shortcut that I just pulled out of this folder here. I just started here with a completely new Blender version because I will also show you, if you haven't worked with Blender before, like myself 2 weeks ago, how to import also this script that lets you import those dumps from renderdoc. Okay, so this was the background. Again, tools needed: the renderdoc, Chrome, renderdoc 1.6, an older Chrome version. Let's try it with the new version. The old Chrome version was Chrome 71, then a current Blender version. This doesn't need to be an older version, and the importer script. So finally, where do you get this importer script? And this is also linked in the original video where I had this from. No, this was Blender, of course. There we go. Let me copy it. And this is the maps in models importer 0.2.2. I'm not quite sure if I needed an earlier one, but I think this works. Apparently, to my notes, this works as well. So there's also some stuff in there where it also tells you how to do it, and this is what we're going to do. Okay, first thing first is, let's start up renderdoc. Again, this is renderdoc 1.6, and it might be, no, I don't want to update, depending on how well my graphics card is being used now by renderdoc. Maybe when we're capturing the stream might get a little bit choppy, but it's only for a couple of seconds. At least I hope so. Okay, so this is renderdoc. Let me zoom in a little. And yeah, it might be a little bit overwhelming at first, but what we want to do is we want to inject RenderDoc into Chrome, and from Chrome we go to Google Maps. Apparently it doesn't work with Firefox or any other browser, but with Chrome there is a way to get to hook the application there. So the first thing, not the first thing, but what we're going to do is going to inject RenderDoc into the process on the GPU of Google Chrome. But when I'm clicking this, it says here injection must happen immediately after the process starts before any graphics API has been initialized. So, but we can already filter here by, we just call it Chrome. Currently, of course, there's nothing here because we haven't started Chrome yet. But we need to inject RenderDoc before Chrome starts, that we can, get a handle on the actual GPU. And how do we do that? Well, with Chrome, you can start it in a special mode where you can have, what's it called? The GPU startup dialog, where it tells you the process ID of the GPU process. And there is a wonderful batch file that I made here. Again, it's just copy and paste. And essentially, if you have installed Chrome into your default directory, it goes like this. So you just open a new command line and say set RenderDoc hook EGL equals 0 and start Chrome with the GPU-sandbox disabled and the GPU-startup dialog being displayed. I hope I make it easy to work with for you, that I just copy and paste it into the chat, and I really hope that this doesn't get flagged as some kind of chat injection or anything. So cool, yeah. This is what we need to set in the command line. I mean, I can just copy this one here, and when I hit Windows key R to get here to this run dialog. Well, actually, I also need the command line, so I just copy this entire thing and paste it here. So I got here the whole thing in the command line, or you just put it like I did here in a batch file and drop this here on, in a batch file on the desktop, as it was in my case. So this is how we're going to launch Chrome, and now two things happened. The first one was this is Chrome here, this empty window. The GPU didn't start already, so this is why the window is completely empty. And behind the window there was this little pop-up here, and that says GPU starting with process ID 1660. This is different each time. But let me just put it here to the side. Don't hit OK yet, but bring up RenderDoc. And there we got the inject into process. Again, you do it by file, inject into process, and it opens up this tab here. And now I already have here Chrome, so I can just refresh here and only see Chrome. And there is the Google Chrome GPU. And this is the process ID there from the window. So we're going to double click this. And now there should be a connection established. And now when I hit OK on this little window here, this is that you know that it works. It says here API Direct 3D. You don't want OpenGL, you want Direct 3D 11. So apparently this works because you also notice that it works if you get this overlay here on Chrome, displaying the FPS and so on. It says here F12 or print screen to capture, which we will going to need. Okay, so finally we are hooked into Chrome with our RenderDoc. Now let's bring up, there's one thing that says you're using an unsupported command line flag, disable GPU-sandbox, stability and security will suffer, but yeah, for now this is cool. Let's go to google.maps.com and just find us a map. Why doesn't it work? Oh, it's not google.maps, it's maps.google.com, of course. So this is beautiful Salzburg right now, but where should we go? Of which should we take a little snapshot of? Let me know, please, in the chat if you have any recommendations. We're here. This is a wonderful, beautiful blue marble. So the world at our fingertips. Which region or which part of a cityscape perhaps we want for our little test there. 6 viewers there, and everyone is apparently enraptured. So is Stonehenge in there? I have no idea. Let's try it. Stonehenge. The little people of Stonehenge. In Salisbury. And yeah, there's the A303 right next to it. So I switch over to satellite. And look at this. There is Stonehenge. The first thing, if you want 3D models, of course, is to switch there in Google Maps from map over to satellite view. And then you can click this wonderful button here that's enable globe view. And this now switches over to 3D. So, and if I'm holding now control there, yes, look at this. There is Stonehenge in 3D here. I'm sorry if I'm scrolling the screen along with it. Now it looks better. But yeah, with Stonehenge, I wasn't actually expecting that it was mapped, but apparently it is. And Wow is there. Hey there, nice to see you, Phil. Hello there, how are you doing? Okay, I'm not too happy with Stonehenge because there's not much around it actually, apart from just a couple of trees and of course a road. Yeah, I'm going now to try something different. Oh, didn't know that Stonehenge was that far to the south. I always thought Stonehenge was around here, but yeah, I'm not too good with English geography. You know what? I've just been reading some William Gibson, so let's head over to Japan because there must be a lot of fun stuff to find here. Let's find the Tokyo Bay area here. A lot of fun stuff to be found in terms of buildings and so on. The Nintendo HQ, I have no idea where it is. This was my biggest problem that I had, at least with the original Nintendo HQ. But you know what? Let's try it. I think it's in Kyoto. Nintendo Tokyo branch office is here, and Nintendo company, I think, is this it? Let me just check. Does this look like Nintendo? It kinda looks like Nintendo, but not the big flashy office that they moved into a couple of years back. Nintendo HQ, let me try it again. Just Nintendo. Wow, just one Nintendo should suffice. Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Tokyo, Nintendo Kyoto. There we go. Is this the Nintendo that I'm thinking of? From this side here. Does this spell Nintendo? I'm not quite sure. But it looks correct. It looks a bit like an 80s office block you would see in a documentary. Yes. Yeah, this was the whole point of my Me at Nintendo HQ fun bit. If you haven't seen it I think it was the Ludum Dare postmortem of Power MT, where faked a little Nintendo throwback sketch there. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if this is the Nintendo HQ that I want anyway, but you know what? But let's go with it because this part here looks cool on this little island. Is it an island? It appears to be an island. So yeah, let's take this part here. Okay, next thing is how to position your camera if you want to capture something. The big problem with Google Google Globe, as we have it here, is that it's very well managed in terms of not depth of field, what's it called? Level of detail. Because as soon as you zoom out, it switches over to very low resolution images or low resolution models and textures. So you want a way to force Google to use the highest definition that you can squeeze out of it. And one trick is to zoom out the Google window to 24% so that Google really thinks that you're looking at a high density monitor. And of course, another thing that's important, because like I said, we're going to capture what's being shown on the GPU, is to make the window as big as possible. Here on my UHD screen, probably, the frame rate is now at 20 FPS. I'll make it smaller again because maybe I would assume that the stream might be already a little bit chugging along there. So yeah, this is one part of it, to zoom out Google Chrome as far as you can. I just reset it here at, I think it's 100. And the other thing is you don't want it to have this kind of horizon line there, because you just get pretty much the camera frustum. It's called the frustum, what the camera actually sees there. So you get pretty high detailed blocks here in the foreground, but then it doesn't extend all the way to the background, because I think Google is also using some kind of background image there that's being generated depending on where you're looking at. So you just get a couple of blocks there. So if you really want to get a certain region, let's say we only want this little island here, I just position my camera straight on top looking down, so I'm hopefully getting all the detail there on all those office blocks here, on those buildings there, as well as on the ground. So let's try taking a screenshot of this one here. So, well, actually it's not a screenshot, it's a GPU dump. And how do you do this? It's a little bit tricky, but I just want to make sure that every one of you got at least the understanding of what needs to be done up to this point. We got Marshall W Thief, if I'm correct, Marshmal W Thief. Hey there. Oh no, I missed the start. I wasn't sure when you would be starting, but hi there. I'm not that far in. Just if you can, just enjoy the rest of the stream. But yeah, I just said what important apps to get and how to hook your render dock into the Google Chrome GPU process. Okay, so like I said, it's in the GPU process, and because this is highly optimized, Google Chrome doesn't update at 60 FPS the entire 3D scene there, only when we're moving. So the important part is to be moving or just to rotate your camera at the same time when you're taking, moving your camera, anything pretty much, when you're taking the screenshot. Again, it's not a screenshot, it's a GPU dump. I just zoom in so we can hit F12 or print screen. I will use F12 now, because when I hit print screen, I bring up a green shot, which is my screenshot capture software of choice. Anyway, I position my camera here, and when I'm hitting down and up there on the keyboard, you can see there this kind of smooth motion there. So this means that when I'm hitting F12, the image will be updated. So this is what I will do, and I apologize if the stream is getting laggy for a second. Okay. This should have been it. F12 also means there in Google that it opens up here this inspector, this web developer view, which we don't need. But if we head over there to render dock, now you can see here it says captures collected. Let me zoom in here, and we got pretty much the screenshot that we have here. Of course, well, maybe I would have disabled there, or at least collapsed this bar here, which I had before, but yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm not quite sure. I think this gets rendered last. Okay, so now we have our dump here, and now I can close Google, because usually we wouldn't be needing it. So now here, since I closed the process here, Chrome here, or not Chrome, render dock loads the last thing, the last snapshot that we had, and in our case we only have just one here. And like I said, this is pretty cool here what render dock does, because here on the top view here, you have more or less a timeline and see what happens in which order here. Right now you don't see much because I'm zoomed out, but let me show you again. You can see here everything is constructed of those little tiles there at each frame. So essentially this just visualizes draw calls, because yeah, with Google everything is in those tiles. So every tile, no matter if it is half a block or even 1/3 of a tree or something, everything just pertains to this individual tile as it is. And afterwards, as you can see here, when I zoom in, after this initial drawing is done here, we just got here some more draw commands. This copies it over in the buffer, the rendering, and then on top it draws here all the streets, and in the end it populates everything with the labels there for the street names and so on and so forth. You can see it here. In my case, I've flipped it around because usually it gets drawn from top to bottom, or the other way around. And with this here in the zoom here, with this you can flip it, that you can actually see it how it's going to be displayed. So this is wonderful. We pretty much got everything that we want here. Like I said, I have a lot of fun playing around with RenderDoc, not just in Google Chrome, but even for my own games. For example, I recently tried out RenderDoc on what's it called? Headroom, the Ludum Dare game that I made with Max back then, which was my only Unity 3D game. And it was very interesting to see that I thought Unity would do some kind of draw culling itself, but apparently, at least in the version that we used back then, it didn't. So, and with RenderDoc, I found out that each time the entire background terrain was being drawn, despite your being indoors inside and wouldn't see it past, of course, the walls of the room that you were in. So yeah, this was, of course, this actually showed me, yeah, this explains a little bit of the performance issues we had there, because yeah, each tree essentially was being rendered and then occluded in the end. I don't know if this was intentional or not, or if they changed it, but like I said, with RenderDoc, you see what you get there. What's also cool about RenderDoc is, as you can see here, it just says which bunch of triangles is being drawn. And here I'm just in a texture viewer. Again, we can see here all the buffers that we have. With Google Chrome, we have a coverage buffer, I think that's what it is, and of course the render output. But with games, of course, you have your Z buffers, your specularity buffers, and so on, depending on how many your renderer uses, of course. Then we got here, of course, the pipeline state, which I really haven't quite found out how this works, because I'm not really that well versed with graphics. But here, the mesh viewer, this is fun, because, of course, the mesh viewer displays the current mesh that is being drawn. And let me just try here. You can say here, if you want to visualize the input or the output, of course, is where it's being drawn in the final output, of course. And let's bring up, let's take this here and say VS in, and then I switch over the shading to, let's say, flat shaded, and yeah, you can almost make out what it actually is that it's being displayed here. Yeah, it's sometimes it's really hard to make out, especially with data that you get from Google Chrome. Like I said, it's not intended to be edited or any kind of human readable, because everything is like I said, tile based. But with the games here, you have probably individual objects, and also the cool thing about here the texture viewer is that you can see here in input. This is for this one tile here, the texture map, and you can see here it looks like what you get from photogrammetry output. It's not intended to be edited by humans, essentially. So wonderful. Yeah, we got our snapshot here. Where is my mouse? Give me my mouse back. Oh no, this doesn't look good. Oh dear. I hope now this doesn't crash. It didn't crash. Wonderful. Okay, so I got here everything that I need. Let's just knock on wood and hope that it works, because now I'm going to save my capture. And I will just save it here. Well, oh, I was in Headroom before. Wonderful. I just save it here on my desktop and call it Capture 1. And if you have RenderDoc installed, or even if you don't, this is very nice that it even has here some kind of thumbnail generation here with the RenderDoc icon there, so you always know from the screenshot of what it actually is that you did the capture. Wonderful. So we got this capture thing here, and it tends to be quite big. I mean, this is now 50 megabytes with the trick that I showed you before, where I just zoom out Chrome and make it full screen on a 4K monitor. Sometimes I get captures of 200 megabytes and so on. This is mostly textures. Yes, so we got RenderDoc. We're finished with Chrome, we're finished with RenderDoc. Okay, so now we have this capture here, and we want to get it into Blender somehow. And I prepared here something for us. Like I showed you before, what we need is this thing here, the maps models importer. I've already posted in the chat the link to this one here, and I will also show you again in the ending the video where I got all this information from. So let's start Blender here. Again, this is the Blender that I just downloaded and didn't do anything with it because of course we need to import first this script there. So let me just scale it down a little that I can zoom in. And yeah, if any one of you knows Blender, then chances are very good that you know it better than me. So if I'm doing anything here wrong, please let me know in the chat. Because like I said, I never used Blender, and just 2 weeks or so I just toyed around a little with it. So probably the things that I'm doing are way too complicated, I think, in the end. But at least I managed to get where I want to get. Okay, so first we need to import this thing from GitHub, and when you download it, you get this, sorry, wrong key code, there we go. You get this maps models importer 022.zip. You don't have to unzip it. If you have Blender open, you just go to, I think it was Blender, was it default, was it edit? I think, yeah, it was edit, preferences or preferences, however you're going to to spell it. And they're under add-ons. Again, this is for people who have never worked with Blender, so it might be a little bit overly verbose for any who know how to do this. Yeah, under preferences and add-ons, you can click here install and then just pick the one that you need. In my case, it's here on desktop, it's this one. And it says install add-on. And of course, the last thing that we need to do is activate it. So did I install it now? I'm not quite sure actually. Add mesh, import BioVision, import FPS export. There it is. Import export maps models importer. The important thing about this is of course that this is ticked on, that it is in fact active. And as far as I know, you don't have to restart Blender or anything. Now it's just loaded. So I just get rid here of the cube, which I don't need. And as far as I know, Blender is everything that you have in Blender is pretty much organized in groups or collections. It's called. So I got here my collection with the camera and the light in it. So I would say let's make a new collection in which to actually import this snapshot there. Okay, let's cross our fingers that this actually works. And now here under import, you should have this Google Maps capture. And from there, I just use our capture here and cross my fingers and see here if anything is going wrong here, because there will be an error output if there is an error. I mean, things are looking good right now so far, so let's cross our fingers and I say unicorn so that we all have a sip of water. I tried it after using Maya for years and found it difficult. Yes, the biggest problem that I have with Blender is that all my key command shortcuts don't work. And you can set your shortcuts there. I think, where was it? Key map here. And yeah, apparently, usually they are set on Blender, and I set it to industry compatible, which are the Maya shortcuts. But the downside to this is, of course, then most of the tutorials don't work because they assume that everything is set up to match Blender, the default stuff. So here we are. Apparently it worked wonderfully, so you don't have to use an old Google Chrome version. If you're using RenderDoc 1.6 and this script here, everything works. And look at this. I mean, it's not very detailed, but it looks nice. It looks very nice. And as a starting point, you can work off of this here. Let me try to switch over. No, this was the wrong shortcut. Over to, where's the shaded version here? Because the cool thing about this is that it should also load the textures for it. So now we are here inside Blender and got our 3D model of what we just captured before. You can see here, when I'm looking from above, it got cut off there at the tiles that weren't being shown. So yeah, you don't get anything more that you don't see in the viewport when you capture stuff. And if you want larger scenes, well, you either have to zoom out further away or you have to stitch them manually together. The author who made this importing script also made a script that allows you to stitch things together. I tried it, it didn't work, and yeah, I paid even 10 euros for it. It doesn't work, so yeah, I hope he gets himself some coffee for my 10 bucks, because yeah, I don't get anything out of it. But he also made a script that is essentially to unify all those texture maps into one huge texture map. Because let me zoom out here. What happened during the import is, if you can see here on my desktop, there is a new folder that is called capture one and a random string here, and this was generated during the import. And let me bring over here the window, and inside this thing here are, in our case, 815 objects, and those are the textures and the UVs essentially for each tile. Yeah, those are the textures and so on and so forth. So if you want to export it as FBX, for example, if you want to go to Maya with this, yeah, you will also have to export or at least copy over all those hundreds of PNGs. And so when you import the model in Maya, it will take a long time, because it needs to create shading networks, essentially for each texture one new shading network, and this takes time, and especially it also takes memory. So this is why I invested in this little script there that allows you to combine all those textures. So how does this work? Again, I bring up now where's my Firefox? There it is. I bring up now the original video tutorial that I was following here. Again, this is from Élie, Michel, and the video is called Importing Actual 3D Models from Google Maps. And there is, in terms of troubleshooting and deeper delve information in the blog post. Yeah, this is very technical. But the cool thing about this here is to stitch several captures together. Try Lily Capture Manager and the Lily Texture Packer. And this one I got here for $5, which I think is very reasonable. And yeah, essentially you can see what happens here. Yeah, thank you Firefox. In this image here, it just takes all those individual parts here and cuts out the unnecessary parts that don't refer to or aren't referred by any UV coordinates, and just makes a huge ass texture out of it. Again, if you have a high fidelity, this texture can be easily 12,000 by 12,000 pixels. So yeah, again, it's going to be quite a load on your GPUs, but again, I think this is a very, very cool way if you want, like I said, to get Google Maps data into your 3D software for reference, for just quick tests there, for mostly for when you're doing maybe a game with a whole city involved. Let me go to layout. Am I in layout? Yes, but why am I still in the drawing mode? Like I said, I've never used what's it called, Blender before for anything apart from just quickly exporting and importing stuff, essentially using it as a converter. But yeah, if you're making a driving game, for example, and you want to get the proportions right, as how wide are boulevards or streets actually, how high do buildings actually get, and so on and so forth. And I think this is just great for this. You probably don't want to use it for trees, as you can see here, and of course you can't use this commercially, because I mean, in the end it's property of Google, so yeah, we don't mess with that. But like I said, yeah, it's pretty cool, and you got even here this bridge underpass here. And if you just needed a very specific point of view there, then of course you can go in further and just stitch it together and so on and so forth. But like I said, I feel it's very cool getting stuff out of Google Maps that you aren't actually supposed to get out of Google Maps. Okay, so this was much faster than I anticipated, even with my technical difficulties in the beginning. I'm done with this after 43 minutes. Before I will show you my pet project that I've been toying around with past couple of weeks. Are there any questions, comments, or anything? I'm happy to answer any questions at all. Probably not with the right answers, because I don't know a lot of stuff. Yes, again, I've just made some notes here, but I will just summarize again what tools you need for this. You will need RenderDoc 1.6. Chrome, any Chrome version will do. I just did this with the latest Chrome version. And of course, you will need Blender and this maps models importer script for Blender. And you're pretty much all set. Cool. So let's close this here, and I'm not going to save it. So about my little pet project. Well, oh, there's a question. Why can't you just stitch with Blender itself? Are the models not compatible? I think the models are generated each time anew with each snapshot you make. So I'm not quite sure that the vertices actually are always on the same positions, because mostly what trips it up is the very dynamic level of detail. So you can't quite be sure that you're always getting the highest detailed version of a model or not. I haven't tried it. I have to say I haven't tried it with Blender itself. So if you can do it with Blender, I think even this script does it with it's a Python script, and that does it with Blender. So I'm assuming that it would do things with that. But from what I've found out is that the stitching process of the script works more by comparing UV textures and doing the stitching that way. In theory, like I said, I had a very complicated model, and for me it didn't work. So yeah, I felt a little bit ripped off. But yeah, then again, I mean, it was $10, so it was okay. But I mean, in the end, losing money still hurts, especially if you don't get anything out of it. But yeah, like I said, I'm not too well versed with Blender, so probably Blender artists may be very well able to do the stitching. You're welcome. Okay, so long-time viewers, or let's say viewers who are watching this very channel when I'm not there, maybe have seen the old-timey computer show, which I'm hosting there on my channel, because yeah, I just love retro computing and retro gaming stuff. And the old-timey computer show Twitch channel, it's all one word, old-timey computer show. Essentially, they're just curated old-timey computer shows that just run in a loop, and each day there's a new selection of, I think, a couple of hours worth of shows, and then it repeats 3 times a day. And yeah, one of those shows that I recently discovered, I've seen excerpts of it once or twice before, is called Computer Chronicles, and it was a show that ran, I think, from 84 up to the early 2000s, and it was essentially just a half an hour program about current trends in computers and current trends in software. And the cool thing is they had always people from the industry, software developers, showcase their programs just very shortly and really ask questions and talk about it. For example, they always had a theme like tax software or computer-aided design software. And also in between and after those bits, there were just some computer news. And from nowadays standpoints, it's really fun looking at it and at how many things were actually just side notes to history. And oh yeah, of course, IBM also tried to make a CP/M system, but they went with Microsoft's MS-DOS instead. And those are just side notes, but of course nowadays we know that huge fallout comes from those very minor decisions, I would say. So yeah, where am I going with this? Like I said, I was entranced is the wrong word. I was just petrified is also the wrong word. Man, I really should have used some dictionary or syllabus before. No, I would say I'm enraptured. That's the word. There we go. With this program, because like I said, it's late 80s, and it really speaks to me at my childhood in a sense. So I just want to show you how this the Computer Chronicles studio looked like. And yeah, this is how it looked like. And I thought, yeah, this is it looks so dated, right? This wood grain, and also there the fashion design, and also what's there in the background. And while I was watching this, I just was really, I wanted to know what is this thing here, there to the left. What is this? Is this an IC? What diagram is this? It says here NITJ and then something. What is this? And I was just obsessed with this, and so I tried to recreate it in Maya, because of course you do. And let me just bring up here Maya. And like I said, I thought it was just a nice little modeling challenge, just trying to recreate something like this. And here's the current in progress version. You can see here the desk here is just very, very poorly stand in, just modeled. It's not even symmetrical, just modeled after an image plane that I had there. But let's switch over to the textured view, and there you can see something where I had to get some 3D models out of Google Maps that I could use here in the background. And this one is still not finished. It's a very stand-in version. You can see here still some missing triangles there, some holes there. But yeah, this is, if I switch back to, where were we? Here, this is this background here. And what's with me, I love to do research and really get into research, just live the research, because you really can't Google it. What's the background in Computer Chronicles? I don't think I did this, but I didn't really, I don't think that you can find an answer there. So then it is more or less a trial and error in a sense. But the interesting thing is that I played Watch Dogs 2, I think half a year ago, and for some reason this looked to me like San Francisco, and then of course I looked a little bit more into it, and of course this program was produced by a California station from San Mateo, which is not too far away. And I think, I looked on Google Maps on downtown San Mateo, which is south of San Francisco, and I didn't find this skyline here, but this bar here looked a lot like the Oakland Bridge. And then I realized, and there is Treasure Island back there, and this must be San Francisco. And of course it was. So it wasn't that much of a problem finding the right spot from which this was photographed off. And the interesting thing is I can show you the exact place, the building where this picture was taken. And this is really what I love about research, is that once you start diving into things like this, what you get out of it is really interesting and enlightening in a sense. So where is Google Earth Pro? There we go, because I set there a bookmark. And while this is booting up, let me show you something else. As you can see here, this integrated circuit board here, or whatever this is, I will show you how I got this one. And of course there is this weird image that was really hard to discern what it was. Let me just flip over here. This thing here was really, like I said, not easy to identify. And this actually is a cheat, but I will get to this in a bit. So first let's consider ourselves with this view here. Help us improve Google Earth. No thanks, not now. So Computer Chronicles matte painting, there we go. For once I was faster than the internet there. I would assume, well, did I switch off 3D buildings? This was the problem. So there we go. The 3D buildings should come in one by one. And look at this, now there are trees there in Google Maps. This is new, I haven't seen this before, where it actually looks like trees. But if I zoom out here a little bit or move the camera, and you can see this thing here. This is some kind of hotel, I think, and from the rooftop of this hotel, this view there that we see from Computer Chronicles was photographed. And there we can see the Oakland Bridge and what's it called? Yerba Island, I'm not quite sure what's it called. And there behind there is of course Oakland, and so on and so forth. So once I had this downtown essentially viewport. I did it like I showed you before. I just went over there and from this perspective took a couple of GPU captures there, and for the background I just positioned myself here, and yeah, Oakland is now not loading for some reason there, and also the topography there behind of the hills is not there. I'm not quite sure why, but either way, yeah, this is where I got the GPU capture from, and then I think this is just really a test rendering that I did there in Blender actually, because I wanted to learn a little bit of Blender. So yeah, this was one thing, and I'm hugely proud to be able to really find the exact spot where this picture was taken sometime in the early 80s. And then there is this other picture there, which I also wanted to try and find out what this actually is. Here I can show you how blurry it looks. I got some better images here of this one, but yeah, it's really not easy to discern what the hell this thing is. But if you watch a little bit, if you look at it a little bit longer, you can actually sense, yeah, this looks to be like some kind of land mass, and this blue thing here must be water, so it looks to be like an aerial picture. And then I googled aerial pictures of San Francisco, because of course this would make a lot of sense. There they changed up the background a bit, and let me go to a different folder here that's called Bay Area, and there we go. Here I got, of course, took a lot of references there. Oh, this is already not the reference itself. This is already the image there. But you can see here, for example, a little bit more detail. And this brown strip here, this is what actually made me identify what the hell this was. And let's zoom out here, and if I position my camera like so, you can probably see what it is. Let me just switch here back. Yeah, this darker strip here actually is this park here. I have no idea what's it called, but yeah, this is a very prominent feature there. And there we got, of course, the Golden Gate Bridge and Oakland there, and yeah, the hinterlands. And yeah, this was actually a picture taken from space, apparently, because, well, not in this thing you can see it, but you can see here a little bit of of the Earth's atmosphere and so on. So I got a couple of shots here. There you can see it a little bit better. And yeah, again, I went to Google Earth, but this time I didn't have to import it to Blender or anything, because it was from such high above that I took a couple of screenshots straight out from here. You can see here Google Earth with a simulated atmosphere and without, and with the sky on and background on and off and so on and so forth. And here I got some reference images which have essentially the same kind of color scheme there. Yeah, just aerial pics and pics from the space shuttle, I think, taken from the space shuttle, of course. And yeah, this was my reference. And then I just went ahead to Photoshop and came up with this pretty thing here. Yeah, the curve was all done in Photoshop there. And yeah, I painstakingly cut out the blue parts of the water there, so that I would get this blue gradient correct. And this is the thing that I managed to put here in the background of this set. Again, that it looks like it was this thing here. Yeah, excuse me, I didn't get the proportions of the set correct yet, but I think I'm halfway there, because I think the painting is, or the picture is, hanging a little bit too low. It looks a little bit off. This is all what I'm saying. Okay, which brings us now to those two things here. This first diagram here, you can say here it says NITJ X arc 2 49 ZQ and JQS or something. So I thought, yeah, this, I mean, you could even make it out there. If I show you here my references, you can even see it here. So it wasn't that big of a problem trying to Google for it. And because I had, of course, all the name, those numbers, how hard can this be? Well, turns out I have no idea what this thing actually is. It looks like an extension card, but I didn't find any trace of whatever this is. I googled for NITJ, which I think is some kind of university in the Middle East. Don't quote me on this. XArc2 didn't yield to anything. 49ZQ could also be anything, but with the image search even I didn't find anything even remotely close to this diagram. So you probably wonder, well, that's all nice and well, but how or where did I get this high-res version of this anyway? And the sad truth is that I drew this in Illustrator. I used everything that I could find as references from the show. Let me just quickly show you here. Here in those close-ups there, and when he was moving his head, I could peek a little bit behind it. And yeah, just from this, I more or less, from bits and pieces, I pieced together what this thing actually looked like there, also from different episodes. And yeah, there was enough coverage in the end that allowed me to reconstruct this whole thing here. And for some reason, I like the aesthetics of it. I still have no idea what it is, but I think I might have this printed on a t-shirt, white on black, I think, or even bright gray on black. I think this would look amazing. And if anyone asks me, hey, what's this on your t-shirt, I could easily say, apparently you haven't watched Computer Chronicles, which is not a apt answer because, like I said, I have no idea what this thing is. And of course, which brings us to our last thing here. This was more or less the hardest thing to find. And like I said, this is a cheat. Well, how is this a cheat? Well, let's bring up here this the references that I took of this one. There we go, CC references. So those were all my references that I had for this thing here in the background, because it's really intricate and you hardly can make out what it is. And I just knew that it was some kind of integrated circuit because it looked like it, but what kind of integrated circuit? My first stop or realization was, let me just Google for Motorola 68000 die. And if I bring up this one here, the first image is cool. Look at this part here. This looks quite a lot like the image that's being there in the background, right? I mean, it looks to be a part there of course, of this Motorola chip. By the way, this is the chip in the Sega Genesis, I think, and the Macintosh and the Atari Jaguar, I think. Yeah, I think that's a Motorola 68000. Anyway, so I thought, yeah, it can't be too hard. It's just this kind of thing here. This it looks to be some kind of RAM or ROM. In this particular chip, it's actually the ROM, but it looks to be like some kind of RAM chip because everything is so neat and uniformly that it must be a RAM chip. Turned out, yeah, it looks a lot like it, but it isn't it. And how is it not it? Because of those things here at the side. This doesn't look to be just some crop of this die shot there. This looks to have really some kind of terminators there, or what's it called? Just some contact points there in the end. A fun fact, by the way, since I took a lot of those reference shots there, at some point they must have, in the studio, they must have dropped the image or just did some redecoration and put it up 180 degrees reversed. I don't think this was intentional. So if you watch here, what you can see here on his back is this white thing there in the middle and those black squares there. And now we go here and the black squares are gone. There are white squares and this one is gray. Yeah, this is just, like I said, rotated by 180 degrees. I think I'm the only one ever to find out about this. So yeah, in the end, this led me down one hell of a rabbit hole. But in the end, I was quite sure, because now I just Googled for different kind of RAM chips or die shots that I could get from the 1970s or late 70s. Then I think I even found a RAM die 1971. Yeah, of course, RAM and die. This is really hard. Let's say memory die. There we go. So yeah, I found a lot of die shots that looked similar, but not quite it. And in the end, yeah, this was one of those Intel chips there. So I would assume from how it looked like, it would have been an Intel chip of some kind. And then, like I said, I just was looking at kinds of die shots, and even in my books, I have books from the 80s that also have some kind of history about programming and the computer itself, and they also featured some die shots, and I thought maybe on the off chance that there would be a picture of exactly that in there. It wasn't, but still, in the end, I think I'm still not quite 100% sure. By the way, I even asked around on Reddit, which is for me something very novel. And in the end, I think it was an EEPROM or EEPROM. Got EEPROM die shot. This is really ambivalent when you want to get certain kind of images and then you find others. But when we look at, let's take this one here, my first attempts to take here, this looks a lot like this one here, but it's not quite it. This, for example, is a little bit too dense, but yeah, you can see, I think, how close it was. So what the hell is this now, and why is it a cheat? Well, this is an EEPROM from Intel, because like I said, it looked like a lot like an Intel chip. Let me just find the right folder there. References, yeah, those are a lot of references that I found. Like I said, this one here and so on. And this, I mean, it could be this one, but I don't know which chip this is, and I didn't get a better picture of it anyway. Yeah, this is the 68000 again, and so on and so forth. And the one chip that I found that looked the closest, sorry, my computer is just a little bit choking on those Motorola chips, because those are 10,000 by 12,000 pixels, those close-ups there. And what's this? Oh, this was my reference. And the one that I found there was from, yeah, let's do it with this one here. This was from the Intel Museum, one of the EEPROMs, I think from the early 70s, and I found this somewhere in the Intel Museum. But if you rotate it by 90 degrees and then just stretch it and pull it a little bit vertically, yeah, now it's saving this I didn't want. You get this, and this is the result of many hours of research. But like I said, I do love my research. And lastly, this was the easiest thing here, this Computer Chronicles logo, because this was just an exercise in counting in counting squares. And then the font, thankfully, I'm quite well versed with fonts, and this is the standard computer font. I think every one of us has seen hundreds of times. They went crazy with this in the 70s, and the font is called, I think, Data 70 font. Yeah. And if you Google for Data 70, this is the stereotypical computer font, and this they also used for Computer Chronicles. And on this part there of the set, usually the program would run with just a double shot from the two presenters here, also behind some smaller desk with a different background image, which I haven't cared to look into. And then, of course, there is the starting moderation. The welcoming is in front of this wonderful wall here. And then as soon as they have guests, they move over to there. So yeah, I got from the introduction, oh cool, Team Viewer apparently crapped off, so who cares? And where do I have it? I don't even have it here. Anyway, yeah, it's just making sure that the letters are at the right positions there overlaid on top of where the squares are. But again, this was very simple to do. But this horrible wallpaper there, I mean, this fake wood grain there is one thing. I didn't get it right, but yes, I'm still working on this. But this wallpaper here, this was the first instance that I could make use of one of those integrated procedural textures that come with Maya for the past, I don't know, 20 years almost. It had always been there, and the texture is called granite or granite. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. In German it's granite, so yeah, we stressed the final syllable. But yeah, this is just this ugly little dot texture there, and it's just perfect. It works for this very 1980s set. Yeah, and the last, very last thing, of course, you can see probably those red rectangles here, is the lighting. Because I'm not quite sure how to do studio lighting in a sense, because the only thing that I know I can do semi well is doing scenic lighting and making something pop from the background and so on, and more dramatic stuff. And studio lighting is just, especially back in the 80s, flood everything with light so that there aren't any shadows. And it was really hard in that environment trying to recreate how the lighting was being done. Of course, thankfully, this is the internet. I found manuals in a sense of how to light for studios, how to light for talk shows, and this is pretty much my first attempt at this. So you probably can't see it here, but let's do a quick render. Again, I apologize if the stream is now breaking off a little bit. But look at this, my bitrate is okay, so yeah. Okay, I just I'm trying now to cancel the rendering because, like I said, I have I have a strange feeling that the stream might be affected too badly by me trying to render this with all my cores that I have. So escape, I'm hitting escape. Apologies if this is not coming through. Escape, there we go. So yeah, you can't see much because I broke off the rendering. Broke off? What's that? This is a Germanism. I just literally translated to cancel, which is in German abbrechen, to break off, which is a literal translation of cancel in German to English. I'm sorry. So yeah, this is one of my little pet projects. It's just, like I said, just for shits and giggles, trying to recreate an 80s set. But with me and pet projects, it's always this one thing that is, I put it in the drawer because maybe I need it. Maybe I will do one funny bit for my post-mortems where maybe I insert myself as a guest to the Computer Chronicles and just throw a temper tantrum when my game isn't working or anything and cut back and forth to the original footage from back then. Maybe something along those lines. Okay, I said this is one of my pet projects. Of course, I have another project. Currently, I'm working on the post-mortem of the latest Ludum Dare. As we all know, Ludum Dare 46. But I already wanted to produce something, to get something done. And I'm also playing concurrently the original Mafia game from 2002, which was back then just mind-blowing in its presentation of story, details. You had a full city you could explore, all in 1930s cars and with 1930s music and so on. It was incredibly amazing, but in the game, there was this one mission where you just had to drive on a racing circuit. In the story, it was, your Don has bet on his driver to come in first. But in the end, someone broke his arm, and now you, as a player, have to drive and come in first. And this race broke many people trying to play the game. This was, I think, after 40-ish% completion of the game, you would have this race. Back then, you couldn't skip it, and you had to go 5 laps, and if you made a single mistake, you were out. And most people just gave up there. It was, to say, the Dark Souls of racing games back then, because it was really this racing track never showed again in the game. I'm not quite sure why it is in there, because it really had a racing system where it also would warn you if you go in the wrong direction. It had a countdown, it had lap times, and so on and so forth. It was really a full-fledged racing game. There was just one track. And I thought, you know what, since that I'm playing it again, and you could, in the current version that I got from GOG, from Good Old Games, you can set the difficulty, and you can even say, yeah, I want to skip this race. Just please spare me the grief. I really want to skip. And I thought, I managed to do it 18 years ago, when there was no patch where I could just skip it. I really want to get it right, and I want to make this race the good old way, the way as the programmers and game developers intended me to do, through a lot of suffering. And yeah, I thought I'd make a little video about this, not so much about my suffering, but a little bit about the history of the game Mafia, and about how this level became this horrid experience for so many players. And I want to have some kind of snazzy visuals, snazzy not in the sense of Super NES, but snazzy in the sense of flashy. And let me just bring up here another project, which is pet project number 2. Like I said, I want to introduce this racing track properly, and apparently I couldn't set the project, which is a shame, so I have to do it manually. I wanted to smoothly segue over to it. Sorry for hitting the microphone, and it didn't work. So let me find the project there. It says error file. This is bad. So file set project. There we go. Just have to find my way through my file structure, but I still manage. I still manage to get where I want to. Mafia race, visual effects. There we go. Set and open. Don't save. There we go. And here I managed, for the most part, please disregard those little walls there, little stone walls there. Yeah, for the most part I managed to extract the 3D Studio Max data, which was in a proprietary format for the Mafia game there. I managed to export it and get it to Maya. And boy, this was quite an endeavor. It took me again hours of going through Russian modding forums to get tools that get the job done, because of course this is not a one-stop solution. One thing, you have to find a way to get the right textures, you even to extract those textures. And like I said, the game is from 2002, so in terms, let me switch over to the wireframe. In terms of polygon count and texture resolution, 2002, 18 years ago, this was state of the art back then, and nowadays it's just lovable. This whole racing track has 18,000 triangles. I mean, your typical game character has 50 to 100,000 triangles. And also for the textures, the default texture resolution for most of those textures that we can see here is 256 by 256 pixels. Only here the road is a little bit higher in terms of resolution, but as soon here as we are here on the grass outside, if I zoom out now, you can see now here the texture tiling and so on and so forth. And what's missing here still are any kind of adornments such as trees. The only thing that I got here is this kind of fence, if I can zoom in here. But yeah, and the billboards, for some reason they also worked. But yeah, I don't have any kind of trees or vegetation or tires stacked there in the curves or the stands for the audience and so on and so forth. But at least for some kind of simple, this is the racetrack, and this is where I failed so many times in hilarious ways. I thought, like I said, let's make it a little bit more visually interesting and really have the racetrack here displayed for my viewers in 3D to walk them through, so that they don't have to get the old game and install it and then suffer themselves through this thing there. And then in the end, the plan is also to show you how to manage to beat this race even on normal difficulty, because there is one place where you can cheat, and I urge you to cheat remorselessly and repetitively. No, that's not the right word. Anyway, just cheat whenever you can when you get to this part there. But it will all be explained in the video. But again, I found it really funny as another little pet project. Okay, can I get the 3D data out of this game? I'm always having a lot of fun cracking open games and looking at the actual data that's in there, because you can learn so much if you, like I said, just open up games and have a look at the models and how they did the scripting and how many triangles or which surfaces they deleted because they wouldn't be obvious. For example, the first time I looked at a Counter-Strike source at the maps, and I zoomed out, and it just was amazing to me that none of those houses had backsides, because of course you don't see the backs of the houses ever, because those are outside the map, you only see the fronts. And this was just mind-blowing to me of how many triangles you could save that way. And even here in this first curve here, if I move around here, you can see there is something strange happening there, because the wall here, this little wall here, also does not have a backside there, because you don't see it there. And there's also one interesting thing here. This is a little lake, a pond in the game, and I was just blown away because it had wonderful reflections in there. In the game, you could see that there are some trees on the borders of this little lake there. And back then, I mean, even today, we all know that screen space reflections are incredibly expensive. So how did they get wonderfully rendered reflections back in the day? The trick was, I'm not quite sure if you can see it. No, not in this version there. But they just took the trees and the skybox and just physically flipped it. So instead of being a reflective surface, this was just a halfway mirror, and everything else was just mirrored, the geometry and so on, because this was much cheaper to have just a couple of trees. Again, the trees were just two billboards like this at 90 degrees stacked into each other, essentially. And this was way cheaper than having real reflections, because this was very strategically placed, so you would never, if you're here on the track, you would never see any other cars being reflected there, because you couldn't go there where you would possibly see other cars being reflected there, and so on and so forth. So again, cheat wherever you can. And like I said, back then this was just mind-blowing. And I think the same thing they did with the first Deus Ex. I recall maybe it was even in the tutorial mission, where you're just in this hall with a marble floor and everything is just wonderfully reflecting. And it was, I think, 2099. I was just, oh my god, it's full screen reflections. I was a graphics nerd even 20 years ago. And again, they just flipped the entire scene, and the floor was not a mirror but just halfway transparent. And yeah, talking about halfway transparent, it is halfway transparent that I'm just filling time here, because I'm after, how long have I been streaming? Apparently since the stream broke off there when I was trying to render, it says it was 13 minutes. This can't be right. But yeah, I think I'm streaming for 1.5 hours now, and yeah, I just don't want to give you a too short of a streaming experience for me this week. But I thought it was maybe a little bit interesting to see, just getting stuff from that was never intended to be worked on. For example, game data from 2002 or data from Google Maps into your 3D application of choice, so that you can toy around with and play with it. Funny thing about the Mafia game is the modding community is still pretty huge there, and there are a lot of re-imports there in terms of high resolution models, high resolution textures and so on, bigger draw distance. It's really just amazing. But still, I mean, the game, it looks from 2002 back then, it looked quite good, and nowadays all you can see is of course the flaws. But after a couple of hours, you pretty much adjusted, acclimatized yourself to all those flaws, and then it's really still an enjoyable game. But also what's very obvious is that the sensibilities in terms of player guidance have changed a lot. For example, the very first mission in the game, you play as a taxi driver, and those two mafia guys just jump in and say, go, 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 lose them, lose them. And you are in this 1930s taxi automobile, and it's slow AF. And the enemies, the other gangsters, have a higher powered vehicle, and they just keep constantly bump you while you're trying to just get up to speed. And as soon as you hit anything, of course, it's pretty hard, and you're stopped in your tracks again. And I think I tried the first mission. It took me 12 or 13 attempts of just retrying the same mission again until you knew where you had to go and where the enemy car would just wedge itself somewhere where it couldn't get out easily, and then you had enough distance between yourself to that the mission would be marked as complete and so on. But wow, yeah, this was and a lot of the missions are pretty much just trial and error. Try and guess or learn what the designers want of you, where the next wave of enemies is coming from, which position. And there was also this one mission that is in the parking lot, where you have to escape an ambush in a parking garage. And I think this is in every other action game I recall, at least 3 or 4 games where you were just having shootouts in a parking garage. And the bad thing about this game is, for one thing, is you can hardly heal up. I think you're lucky when you're in a mission and in between there is one way of 1 point of healing up. By the way, the game doesn't tell you that this little brown box on some walls is actually a first aid kit, and you can only use it once and it restores half your health. There you go. The biggest problem of the game is that in many missions you have your 2 guys with you, Paulie and Sam, and they also have health, but they aren't the smartest. And if any of those 2 dies or you die, you have to restart the mission. And there are checkpoints within missions usually. No, you start right from the beginning. And it took me, I think, 1 hour to beat this mission, because came wave after wave when you're making your way down, and in the end there was just a blockade with 2 cars there. And the first time I went there, they blew up those 2 cars as soon as I came closer. So okay, next time I don't get closer. Problem is Sam gets closer, and then everything explodes and Sam dies. And then next time I thought, you know what, I will take the stairs, the fire exit stairs. They throw a grenade there. Now I know Sam doesn't, and then Paulie doesn't. And in the end I managed to beat this mission with Paulie having 1 HP left. And I was just catching all the bullets in front of him, because he was just going in front of the enemies, just not taking any cover or anything. And I was just sprinting in front of him so that I would aggro all the enemies and that they would shoot at me and target me and not Paulie. Then afterwards comes a little cutscene, finally, and you think you're through. And then the driving mission gets on, where you're being chased by the guys through the city and have to escape. The thing is, they don't recharge your health. And they don't recharge the health of your guys that are traveling with you. So I'm having Paulie sitting there with 1 HP, which means that as soon as my car hits a wall or anything, or just gets bumped by any of the other cars, I'm not even talking about getting a bullet or anything. So each time it just bumped anything, just vaguely, Paulie would die and the mission would be over. So yeah, my point is a lot has changed in terms of how nice and how frustrating games can be to players. And yeah, I will still play it to the end, but I recall a couple of very tedious missions. I think there was one mission where it was implied that you do a lot of sneaking and knock out guards from the back. And yeah, in the end, you just follow the right trail through the level and don't do anything else, because you will die. And it took me really a long time to realize that the game doesn't want me to try things out, that the game doesn't want me to really memorize where guards were walking and so on, and what their movements were, and maybe there was a blind spot. No, just follow this one route that leads you to the entrance, and there you go. So this was a bit frustrating. Okay, I'm starting to ramble again. I'm really sorry. And this has nothing to do with this wonderful racetrack there from Mafia. But again, I'm just happy that I managed to get it out even with textures, which are just bitmaps.bmp files in 256 colors, because times were different back then. And I think that concludes today's stream. I have no idea what to stream next week, but with so many little pet projects that I'm working on, I'm sure one thing or the other is going to come up. Things that, as you probably have realized right now, that I'm very passionate about it, because there is just so much that I can nerd into. And yes, I used nerd as a verb here. So many things that I can nerd into, and yeah, I'm just so passionate about them. I'm just excited and want to share them with the world and with all 7 of you. So thank you so much for dropping by today. Excuse me for taking time out of your Sunday. As always, it's very much appreciated, and I don't take it for granted that you just really watch me spew. What is it? Nerdery or any kind of other sundries in verbal, verbal effects that amount to not a lot, but I hope at least a little bit entertaining. Let's have a look in the chat. Thanks for sharing the stream. I enjoyed it. Oh, thank you so much. Like I said, it really means a lot to me if you're not just zoning out there and not really paying attention because it's boring or anything. So again, thank you so much. Okay, like I said, I have no idea what's going to be next week, but I think because working on the postmortem, working on this little Mafia video, working on another thing that I have not quite comfortable to announce, because there is not much there to announce, and I don't want to announce anything prematurely. Anyway, yeah, I got a lot of things cooking, and yeah, stuff will come. And as always, I will be streaming every Sunday, unless further notice, because sometimes I get a full-time job now, and it's sometimes it's really hard when you're also stressed all week to prepare something. But so far, let's knock on wood, I've managed almost every Sunday to do it, so I'm looking forward to doing it for the next. So again, thank you so much. Let me find the right slide there that I can switch over to you. And we didn't even drink that much, so I should probably say unicorn, that we all have another healthy sip of water. And I hope you have a great week, and I wish you all the best with your projects that you're working on. And yeah, I think I have so big problems trying to find the right words to finish a stream. So let's not try, and say thank you for watching, and see you around next week.